Blood Warlock, Succubus Partner in the Apocalypse. Chapter 24 Magic Grade Treasure. Although it had only been 5 or 6 hours since he had awakened, the battle to the death against the First Order Blazing Beetle, his first enemy who had actually taken a step on the true path of evolution, Xietain felt as tired as a person who had not slept for 2 days in a row. Therefore, after his exhausted mind and aching body forced him to sleep after reaching a relatively safe place, he was not allowed to wake up until the next day. The world had changed drastically. To say that the previous society had completely collapsed was not an exaggeration in the least, and what all the survivors inside the sports center were hoping for was to get out of this place and get back under the protection of the government and the military. Only then could they feel a little more at ease. None of them knew the situation in which the army equipped with modern weapons was in. The reality was that none of them knew the situation of the outside world. However, for the sake of their own mental health, none of them dared to speak words of despair and even tried not to think of the worst possible situation. When Xietain opened his eyes again, the second day since the beginning of the change had ended and the third day had officially begun. The rain stopped, he muttered with still slightly sleepy eyes as he concentrated on the noise outside. The sound of thunder, the illumination of lightning flashing between the small cracks in the window that the timbers could not cover, as well as the fierce sound of water lashing the world as if it were a punishment from the heavens, it had all stopped. A few hours ago the storm stopped. The reason behind the strange weather in this world was because the sleeping mana could sense the approach of the soul record. Now that the soul record has finally reached this world, things will slowly return to normal. A soft, charming, playful, but also kind voice sounded a few meters away from him. Looking to his left, Xietain saw an extremely beautiful woman sitting elegantly on a table next to the window that was now no longer being covered by a block of wood. The few rays of sunlight that slipped through the clouds surrounded her, creating a great contrast with her black hair and her dark as night dress. Without a doubt, this was one of the most beautiful scenes he had ever seen in his entire life. Angel? Still half asleep, Xietain couldn't help but mutter, "I'm not an angel. I'm a demon." Lilith gave him the most beautiful smile he had ever seen in all his life. "Good morning." Although her smile was beautiful, to Xietain it was extremely dangerous. As if he had received an electric shock, he flinched and looked away as he responded, "Good morning to you too." Lilith's eyes had a strange hint flashing within them. She blinked for a few seconds before shaking her head as if dismissing an idea. "How about your body?" she asked as she approached him with soft steps like a spring breeze. "Now that you mention it." Xietain ignored her as she sat down next to him. He inspected his condition and was pleasantly surprised to find that the wrenching pain he felt yesterday was at least half gone. Although still painful, it was no longer unbearable for him. But what was most surprising was that, after the flesh burned by the beetle's flames fell off, new flesh had begun to grow and skin was slowly forming on the less affected parts. What is this all about?" Xietain was dumbfounded. "Didn't I tell you already?" Lilith didn't know whether to laugh or cry seeing his expression. "Your health is currently several times higher than that of a normal person. If it used to take a person 3 or 4 months to recover from such injuries, you can do it 10 times faster. In fact, with the 90 health points he currently had, his recovery speed was approximately 9 times faster than that of a normal person with no evolution, cell reproduction, repair of damaged cells, and regeneration of new tissue. Everything was much faster. At this speed, I only need a couple more days to fully recover." Xietain felt excited and let out a complicated sigh. He felt happy since by recovering quickly he would finally not have to fear. After all, if another monster similar to the First Order Blazing Beetle appeared, with his current physical condition only death would await him. However, in the midst of that happiness, there was a complex emotion as he had finally realized that nothing would be like before. Xietain shook his head softly and looked at Lilith as he stretched out his arms. She raised an eyebrow and teased, "You want me to hug you?" He rolled his eyes and replied, "Give me my damn orbs already." "How do you know?" She looked at him with wide eyes. "Even though I had fallen unconscious at that moment, I know that you won't let go of anything that could help me grow." Xietain said indifferently. "After all, the faster I grow up, the better it will be for you too. Right, Tisk? You really have no good sense of humor." Lilith clicked her tongue and scolded him while pouting cutely. However, the glint in her eyes was one of mirth, as the smarter he was, the greater the odds of surviving and becoming more powerful. Here, I'll give them back to you, boring man. She waved her hand and 3 objects floated towards him before falling gently into his lap. Xietain looked at her with jealousy. He too wanted to wave his hand and make things float easily, but it didn't seem to be something that would happen anytime soon. Where did you get this? He asked as he looked at her in confusion. She stretched out her right hand gracefully, and without needing to say anything, Xietan's gaze was drawn to a beautiful gold-colored ring with silver runes similar to a wedding ring like the ones Earth people wore. You're engaged, he teased. Idiot. She rolled her eyes charmingly and replied, this is a space storage ring. Inside there's a big space where I can save my stuff, just like in the novels. Xietain nodded with understanding. How can I have one of those? How could he not want one? After all, with a ring like Lilith's, he wouldn't need to carry a backpack everywhere, and his general life would become much simpler in this world. If you want one with a large spatial size like this, then forget it. Lilith softly shook her head as she casually said, this is a legend-grade treasure. Even for you, it's impossible to acquire something of such a level yet. Oh. Xietain couldn't help but be slightly discouraged. Forget legend treasures, he had yet to even see a magic-grade treasure, and his 2 strongest and most precious items were only rare grade. But, seeing him depressed, Lilith continued, if you're lucky, you might be able to get one of lesser quality. You can also get a green orb, and maybe, just maybe, if your luck is really high, maybe you can get one. Forget it. I'll make do with what I have for now. Xietain no longer entertained the matter of the ring. Such things seemed too far away from someone like him yet. Turning his attention to the objects in his lap, Xietan's eyes lit up with delight, and all the previous bad thoughts completely disappeared without a trace. The first order blazing beetle had dropped 3 objects, 2 orbs and 1 skill scroll. One of those orbs was orange in color, representing a rare treasure. Surprisingly, the other orb was deep yellow in color. In other words, Xietain had before him an orb that contained a magic-grade treasure. This was his first magic-grade treasure. Although he had just heard something incredible like legend-grade treasures, he had not been discouraged at all, since after seeing how precious his Xianyuan sword and full coat were, he was definitely looking forward to seeing what this orb before him contained.